And we're back with another video with this 2004 Mitsubishi Montero Limited. This one is called Lucky. You might recognize it from other videos. And what's going on is that it only has heat on the driver side vent. The passenger side vent, the center vents, they don't really have heat. And that is a sign that the heater core is getting plugged up. And so I could pull the dash apart and replace the heater core, and I might still have to do that. But you know what? Before I do that, I'm gonna try flushing out the system, see if we can remove any built up gunk in that heater core. And then the nice added benefit is there's two heater cores in this vehicle. There's the one in the front, it's kind of like right behind the firewall right here. And then there's one way in the back for the rear HVAC system. And the cool thing about flushing the system with something to like decalcify and rust it and everything will be that it'll have an effect of cleaning that rear heater core as well. So that's what we're going to try. Now I've used the Prestone flush radiator flush product before, and that's okay. It's super cheap, so it's worth trying. But I've heard nothing but amazing things about Thermocure. It's supposed to be the best cooling system flush agent that there is. It's many more times expensive than the Prestone one. It's like 5-6 times more expensive. But I'm gonna give this a shot. Now, I don't think that it's that bad in this car, because when I look in like the coolant reservoir and when I look on the inside of my radiator cap, it's not that bad. Like, it's not like the whole cap is covered in rust or anything. Like you can see there's like a tinge of brown there, but it's not horrible. Like on my previous, on my other, one of my other Monteros, this thing was just like nasty, and inside the reservoir was just brown, and that thing there was no saving. I had to get a new radiator and go from there. So it says here, the first step is to drain coolant and flush with water. So let's start there. I'm going to remove the lower radiator hose and drain what I can get out of the system now.
Okay, so we're under the car. I removed the front skid plate, just 4 12mm bolts, and right there is the lower radiator hose. As you can see, access is garbage. You've got this oil cooler here and some lines in the way, and from the other side, if we come from the tire side, it's not much better because you've got like the frame and everything in the way. So even getting the hose clamp off is annoying. You can take the low radiator hose off from the top, but yeah, then it's just gonna be like pouring coolant out all over. It's gonna be pouring over everything. So honestly, you can just undo the, see that white valve right under back there? There we go, that thing right there, that's for the radiator petcock, and it'll drain out of this hose right here, this little tube. So I'm gonna go for that, but you have to be real careful with the petcock valve because it's old, brittle plastic. So don't use a tool, just use your fingers and just be careful. If you break that, it's gonna be real annoying trying to find one that fits it. So mine's turning, no problem. There we go. Ooh, that doesn't look too good. It's supposed to be green and it's like brown. So yeah, we'll let that drain out. I'll go open up the radiator cap and the flow will get better.
So that's just finishing up, and as you can see, this is really not that bad. Yeah, it's like brown, but there's still a greenish tint to it. I've seen 1,000 times worse than this. This is really not that bad, and that makes me very, very hopeful and confident that I think a radiator flush product, like a chemical flush, is gonna take care of the problem. So this is the first one, and again, you're only getting a fraction of your total coolant out by doing it this way. You're really just getting what's in the radiator. So I'm going to close the petcock, and we'll move on to the next step. So there's the first bit that we got out of the radiator. Like I said, actually not looking too bad. Definitely more brown in there than I'd like to see, but still a ton of green. So I marked it on there as with a 1 on the top with the first thing we got out. Next thing I'm gonna do is take the cap off the reservoir, and then you'll be able to wiggle this thing out, and I'm gonna dump that as well. And you can see inside the reservoir, we actually do have some gunkiness that's built up. And this is actually a new reservoir that I just installed a couple weeks ago. So you can see it's already captured like those deposits from inside the system. So it's a good thing we're doing this. So I'm going to rinse this out and just have water in it basically. And that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna fill this up with water, and then I'm gonna fill the radiator up with water. And I'm just gonna use tap water. Normally you don't wanna run tap water in your system because if you have hard water, those calcium deposits in there, they are what can cause your system to like clog up. But I'm not worried about it because number one, I'm gonna get it from inside and I have like a water softener. But the bigger reason why is because it's not gonna be in there for very long. I'm just gonna use it to do the flush. And we're gonna do so many flushes that all of that tap water is gonna come out. And then when we do our final flushes, we'll be using distilled water. So we've got the reservoir filled up with water. We've got water in the radiator and a little bit extra in this funnel. These funnels, by the way, are really cool. They're made for this job. They got these little attachments that can fit on like any radiator to create a tight, like pressure tight seal. And then the cool thing is you can add coolant or water, whatever, into this funnel. And when the thermostat opens, it'll start drinking down this excess automatically. It's easy to top up. You can bleed the air out of the system. These funnels are super handy. So I'll put a link to them below. So yeah, I've got some water in there. And now normally when I do this job, I like to remove the thermostat, and that will allow the coolant to just circulate throughout the whole system and with no restrictions. Because right now, the coolant in the radiator is not going to be flowing into the engine until the thermostat opens, until the engine gets hot enough. And so it really speeds the process up if you remove the thermostat. But in a Gen 3 Montero, the thermostat is what seals the thermostat housing. It's got an O-ring around it. It's a really cool design for ease of replacing your thermostat. And it lives right where the lower radiator hose connects, right there in that housing. And it's super easy to get to. It's only 3 12mm bolts. But like I said, the thermostat has the gasket that seals it from leaking. So the problem is if I took out that thermostat, it would just be leaking a lot and you'd lose, which normally wouldn't be a big deal if I was just like flushing the system with water in preparation to do new coolant. But since I'm going to be putting the Thermocure in there, I don't really want that product to be leaking out. So I'm not going to do it. And it's just going to take longer because we have to run the engine for longer, get it hotter, get that thermostat to open. When it opens, we'll tell because this stuff will probably get sucked down. You'll get a lot more air bubbles and things like that coming out. And so yeah, now there's nothing left to do but turn the car on and run it. You can have someone like raise the RPMs, hold it at like 2,000, 2,500 RPMs, and that'll speed up the process. The car's on, we're idling, and you want to make sure that you have your heat on. And I've also got the rear heat on. So I've got that going, and I'm just going to leave it like that during this entire process, and we'll be able to see hopefully if we start getting some heat out of these 3 vents, because right now only the driver's side has heat. So there we go. There's the second batch of liquid to come out of the system after running it for about 10 minutes until the thermostat opened up. But check this out. Look what I'm noticing inside the funnel. Look at those little flakes. To me, that looks like radiator stop leak product. I reached out to the previous owner of this vehicle. He says he didn't put any of that stop leak stuff in here. So maybe this is from an owner before him. Maybe a shop did it without his knowledge. But that's what that looks like, those little flakes. Unless that's just like bits of rust in the system that's coming out. Because as you're running the engine, the water level in here fluctuates. It like gets real high, then it sucks down, and it left that deposit. So, anyways, I'm gonna do one more. I'm gonna fill it up with water again. I'll run it for 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna drain it, and then I'm gonna fill it up with water with the Thermocure. So right now it is the second batch of water that's flushing through the system. No product yet in there, and let's look at the temperature on these vents. So this is the side that was the only side that was working before. 150. See, that's beautiful. 130. 108. And 85. So you can see how it goes from left to right, but this is already way better than it was before. These were basically doing nothing, and this was the only one that was hot, so that's great. And then the rear vents, they're at about 100 degrees. So we'll compare that to what it's like after the chemical flush. Okay, so as you can see, we've now drained the radiator 3 times 1, 2, 3. And we are going from dark green to brown to light brown. So we're getting less antifreeze in the system as we go. So now I feel pretty confident we've gotten most of the antifreeze out of the system. And so I am now going to add in this quart of Thermocure with the next filling of the radiator with water. And that's gonna be it. Then I'm just gonna drive the car around for, a few days. I don't think the system is that bad. So, it says, you can just drive it for longer. The worse the system, it says drive the vehicle for 3 to 4 hours up to several days for extensive rust. So, I don't know, maybe this week, and then next weekend I'll drain it. And now on this fill with the Thermocure, since I'm gonna be driving it for like a week, what I've done is I have loosened these 2 bleeder screws, and basically you just pour water in your funnel, and then when it starts coming out of these, you loosen them up like that, and you can close them up. Then it's got the air out, and so that'll eliminate any air pockets. And same thing on this side. And just be careful, as you can see here, it says never open when hot. So just be careful with that. And through the magic of editing, we are back. It's a week later. I put about 250 miles on the car, and look at this. I just drained the radiator. Look at that. That is the Thermocure doing its job. It does not smell great, which I believe is normal for this product. So look at this. Look at that. So I definitely got some stuff out of the system. This is just the first time I dumped it. Obviously, I've got to do this a bunch more times until it's coming out in good condition. So I think for this step, I'm sure this is going to take many, many flushes. Probably like another, I don't even know, 6 or 8 or 10 or something like that. It's going to be a long process of filling the radiator with clean water, running it for 10 minutes, dumping it out. I think for this step, I'm still going to use tap water until it starts to get close. Then I'll switch to distilled, and then finally for the final fill, we'll use distilled to cut our concentrate antifreeze. But that's a long ways away. Okay, doing my final drain of water. This is distilled water. I switched to that a couple ago. As you can see, it's coming out pretty good. It's got a yellowish tint to it, but it's still totally translucent. That's about as good as it's going to get with there being some just rust and corrosion on the internal parts of this radiator or heater core or engine or wherever. I did go ahead and replace the 2 rear coolant tees on the passenger side by the transmission. Those were like original and super brittle, and that's just a general Gen 3 Montero thing. Like if you've still got the original ones, you definitely want to get those replaced. They're made of plastic. If they break, it runs to your rear heater core for the rear HVAC system, but everything's all connected. So if one of those breaks or cracks, you'll lose all your coolant, you'll overheat your engine. So I got that done, and I also replaced the upper and lower radiator hoses while I was in there, and those had quite a bit of like built up gunk in them, so getting rid of the old ones was also a good idea just from keeping the system clean. And so now it's time to fill it up with antifreeze. And you want obviously to have a 50-50 mix of antifreeze and water in your coolant. But the system holds 2 gallons, and every time you drain the radiator from the petcock, you only get 1 gallon. So there's still 1 gallon of distilled water in this system that's not coming out through the petcock. Like there are, I believe, engine block plugs, but they're a huge pain in the butt to get off and just not something that most people deal with. So I'm just going to assume that there is 1 gallon of the distilled water in this engine. You're never going to be able to get everything out just through the radiator. So I'm actually going to add 1 gallon of concentrate into here. And then from then on, anything that's needed to bring it up to full, we'll use the 50-50 mix, including in the reservoir. So here's the coolant that I typically use, either Peak or Zurex, just because they have a green Asian vehicle formula that is available in a concentrate. And the concentrate, even if you're not doing it this way, where you're just pouring in straight concentrate because of what's remaining in the system, even if you just want to get 50-50, it's so much cheaper to get one bottle, 1 gallon of concentrate, go to Walmart or whatever, get $1 a gallon of distilled water and mix them together. Comes out like half the price. And one thing that I want to point out when filling up your coolant is you want to remove these bleeder bolts. This one will go first, followed by that one. So you're going to fill up the radiator with coolant until fluid starts to come out of there. Then put your bolt back in, and then you can remove this one and then put in a little bit more and it'll come out of that one, and then tighten it up. And that's bleeding any of the trapped air that was in the system. Let's see if I can illustrate this as I pour in more coolant. Watching that bleeder on the lower radiator hose. Pouring it in very slowly. If you pour it in super fast, it'll just kind of catch up to the top and pour out. So if you pour it slowly, you'll be getting a more accurate measurement. Filling up the system better. Forcing more air out. There we go. Now we can cap that. Okay, so we're filled now. We used almost an entire gallon, and now I'm going to put 50-50 in the reservoir. So what do we think of Thermocure? First time using it? Well, yeah, pretty phenomenal. This was the first gallon that came out of it after a week of running the Thermocure. This was the last. This is as good as I decided to get it. And again, it looks worse than it is. It's pretty translucent. You can see there's still some rust particles that were coming out, floating around in there. So that's that. But then I lost count of how much of the nasty stuff came out. I think I have at least 10 gallons that look like this. Definitely the best coolant flush product I've ever used. And I'll definitely be using it from now on. And now I get to have fun transferring all of the Thermocure antifreeze that's in 5-gallon buckets down into like a bunch of smaller 1-gallon jugs with lids so I can take it to the hazmat recycling center in town. All right, let's see where we're at now. So we're about 155, 138. 20. 109. So you can see we still get hotter going from left to right, but a significant increase in the temperature. I think that was like 85 and now we're at about 110. So everybody higher across the board. Yeah, I mean, it's springtime now. I'm dying in here, by the way. Let me let me turn this down. It's springtime now, by the way, so we'll have to see what it's like in winter in a few months, you know. But so far, really big improvement. Really happy with the Thermocure. It's going to be my new go-to product for doing this sort of thing. And that is it for this one. Thanks, you guys.